What is likely one of the best and certainly most interesting Korean restaurants in New York City right now has to be Kochi. Meaning skewer in Korean, Kochi offers a 9-course $145 tasting menu with a number of the dishes, in fact, on skewers. The restaurant has a Michelin star and I just had to try it, and it definitely was an epic meal. It's an absolutely beautiful spring day here in New York City. Right now I'm at a pier along the Hudson River and I cannot wait for tonight's dinner. I'm going to a Michelin starred restaurant, but it's a pretty unique Michelin starred restaurant. I'll be dining at Kochi tonight, and it's a tasting menu establishment that specializes in Korean skewers. I mean, just doesn't everything taste better on a stick? I feel like Korean fine dining establishments are really having a moment in New York City. I mean, there's just been so many new Korean Michelin starred establishments that have just been popping up in the last few years. For instance, the 2 Michelin starred Korean restaurant Atomix was just listed as the best restaurant in the US on the world's 50 best list. And who knows, Atomix might even gain their 3rd Michelin star this year. Anyways, I'm very excited to dine at Kochi tonight, and this is a very special meal for me because it's my birthday. Now, like I've said before, I'm not the biggest fan of birthdays. I don't like getting older. I just have so many things that I want to accomplish, and I feel like with every passing year, there's more and more pressure on me to make it happen. But I'm optimistic. The future is bright, and I'm going to work so hard to realize my dreams. Tonight, however, I'll be pursuing my culinary passions with a dinner at Kochi. It's time to head to the restaurant. Located in Hell's Kitchen, Kochi opened at the end of 2019 from chef Sung-Shul Shim. Shim previously worked at the 3 Michelin starred Per Se and then now sadly closed and acclaimed Omakase Neta. Right off the bat, Kochi was successful. It earned its Michelin star in the 2021 guide and has maintained it to this day. Chef Shim and his team then went on to open Mari, a Korean hand-roll spot that also earned a Michelin star. I arrived to Kochi at 5 p.m. for my reservation. As I was checking in, I was asked if I was celebrating anything in particular, and while I didn't want to make much of a show of my birthday, I wasn't gonna lie, so I relayed why I was there and got seated. In fact, sharing that it was my birthday would prove to be a blessing in disguise that I would realize later in my meal. In terms of the atmosphere, Kochi is a small restaurant. There are 24 seats in the dining room and 11 along the chef's counter. There's also a covered outdoor area, which was kept pretty warm with heaters, but the real action was inside the restaurant. Overall, I liked the look of the establishment, which was designed by the Midtown Manhattan firm of Studio Rolling. Once I settled in, I explored the menu, and it was pretty straightforward. Kochi serves a single tasting menu, but does have some supplement options to enhance a couple of the courses. There is, however, a chef's special dish that I didn't even notice when I placed my order. It's a course consisting of abalone for $24. I was a little bummed because if I knew about it, I would have ordered it, but by the time I realized the existence of the dish, I was well into my tasting. Regarding drinks, Kochi serves what they call a Soul pairing with their tasting menu for $105. Soul, from my understanding, basically refers to a variety of Korean alcoholic beverages. The restaurant also serves Soul separately along with wines by the glass, beer, and cocktails. A full wine list is also available upon request. I ended up ordering the plum cocktail, which contained house-selected gin, ume plum liqueur, and lemongrass tea syrup. I really enjoyed the drink. It was carbonated and refreshing. The flavor was delightful and well balanced. It was definitely a good cocktail to pair with my food. And speaking of food, my first course was presented, the sweet potato soup. The presentation was a bit surprising to me. Usually in fine dining restaurants, when there's a soup or sauce added to a dish, it's done by a server tableside, but this wasn't the case with Kochi. However, I didn't mind it at all, as it really was a sharp-looking dish consisting of a chapsule beignet, caramelized apple, toasted yulmu, and caviar. Looks, however, are secondary to flavor, and my goodness, that dish had flavor. The sweet potato soup broth with the apple was incredible. Now, the caviar may have provided a bit of a salty contrast to the sweetness, but it was largely lost within the dish. Frankly, I didn't really care because what I was eating was delicious. Regarding the beignet, it was wonderful. It was like a little bite of heaven. My dinner was certainly off to a great start. The next course was the hui, which consisted of red snapper, bergamot doenjang, a fennel salad, and satsuma. I thought that it was pleasant. It was very light and sort of refreshing. It's the sort of dish that helps pave the way for the heavier and richer courses of the menu. Next up was the eggplant tigim with rice cakes, a pine nut hummus, turnips, and fermented chili. There's no question about it, the eggplant tigim was a good dish. Tigim is the sort of Korean equivalent of Japanese tempura. This resulted in the rice cakes having a wonderful texture and flavor. The only problem was that I wasn't quite sure of the best way to consume the dish. The rice cakes were on a double skewer, which made dipping it into the hummus and chili a somewhat awkward affair. I managed though, and I really liked what the two condiments did for the course. Next up was one of my favorite dishes of the evening. It was the halibut with a jiri consomme, a bean sprout and mustard green namal, and tofu. I tried the consomme first and loved it. There was an abundance of flavor to it. It had depth, a little spice, and went very well with the other components of the dish, like the tofu. Regarding the halibut, it was cooked perfectly. It was light with a delicate texture, and combined with the consomme, it made for a truly delicious course. Following the halibut was another pleasing dish, the pork katsu. The course consisted of pork tenderloin, black garlic sauce, a curry carrot gratin, and grilled corn. I tried the pork first, just as it was, and it was excellent. The meat was perfectly cooked, and the crispy coating was a textural and flavorful delight. I then added some of the garlic sauce, which lent even more flavor. The other elements on the plate, like the curry carrot gratin and the grilled corn, were fascinating and didn't feel like they were added haphazardly, but could stand triumphantly on their own next to the pork. Once again, Kochi nailed another dish. Next up felt like the main course of the menu. It was the Long Island duck breast with barley risotto, duck jus, and a potato pancake. However, I could have actually gotten the A5 Wagyu as a $59 supplement, and it certainly sounded good, but I ended up really enjoying the duck. The meat was perfectly cooked and contained a boatload of flavor. The duck combined very well with the barley risotto. In fact, everything on that plate went pretty well together, even though it felt like there were a number of disparate elements. The overall profile of the dish was one of heartiness. It was comforting and I really enjoyed it. To sum it up, that was a delightful course with a lot of good flavors and textures. Following the duck was a Korean classic, the shrimp bibimbap. The course contained soy-cured shrimp, a sous vide quail egg yolk, seasonal sprouts, candied anchovies, and seaweed rice. This was also another instance where I could have added a supplemental ingredient. For $16, I could have included sea urchin, which sounded great, but I stuck with the shrimp. Now, none of the flavors of the dish were really new or mind-blowing, but what it was proved to be simply a very well-done bibimbap. Every component in that bowl was done just right, resulting in a dish with classic, comforting tastes and textures. It certainly was a nice conclusion to the savory portion of my dinner. My first sweet course of the night was the omija raspberry, which consisted of a raspberry sorbet, puff adlai, and an omija creme fraiche. The dish was sort of like a palate cleanser, but there were multiple flavors and textural dimensions that gave the course more depth than just a typical transitional dish to the more elaborate desserts. The raspberry sorbet had a delightful and refreshing flavor, while the creme fraiche added a slight richness, and the puff adlai provided a nice crunch. Overall, that was a delicious treat. Now I thought I would only have a single dish left, but because I mentioned that it was my birthday earlier, I was given a special celebration course complete with a candle. It was a sort of custard topped with fruit, and it looked very appetizing. After blowing out the candle and making a wish, I turned my attention to the official dessert from the tasting menu since it was frozen and I didn't want it to melt. The dish consisted of strawberry yogurt with a black sesame white chocolate glaze and macerated strawberries. It was simple and fun, although I had to eat it sort of delicately since it easily crumbled and I didn't want to make a mess. The flavors were nice, but nothing that I haven't had before. It simply didn't have the wow factor like some of the other courses did during my dinner. Still, I can't deny the fact that it was tasty and I enjoyed it. To finish things up, I returned to my special birthday dessert. If I remember correctly, it was a yuzu custard and it was delicious. The custard was nice and smooth, and the acidity from the fruit was wonderful. Like I said before, I'm not the biggest fan of birthdays, but hell, if it gets me a dish like that, then growing old isn't that bad. Now, most restaurants do certain things for celebrations, but to have a completely crafted special dish for birthdays and the like was a very nice touch. I really appreciated that dessert and the hospitality it symbolized. In fact, the service of the restaurant was top-notch, and the courses came out of the kitchen at an efficient pace. All in all, I had a great experience at Kochi on every level. Finally, it was time for the bill. My total with tax came to $178.56, but with my tip, I spent about $215. It was no doubt costly, but if I was going to spend a good amount of money, it certainly felt appropriate to do so and treat myself on my birthday. My dinner at Kochi was wonderful. So I just finished my dinner at Kochi, and then I decided to take a nice leisurely walk over here to Bryant Park, where I'm going to relax and reflect for a bit on the wonderful meal that I just had. I really enjoyed every single course, and plus that cocktail was really nice and refreshing, but the whole experience was excellent. From the service to the atmosphere, it was all around a great evening. Well, I really meant start to the evening. It is Friday night in New York City after all. As far as my favorite courses, I have a few. That sweet potato soup was such a fantastic start to the dinner. I absolutely loved that. I also really enjoyed that halibut. The fish was perfectly cooked and that broth had so much flavor to it. The duck was really good as well. It was a hearty plate, but it also had a sense of luxury to it. I really enjoyed that one. Now, the couple seated next to me, they did get the A5 Wagyu supplement, and it looked really, really good, but I was certainly happy with the duck. Now, that sort of bonus birthday dessert was a nice touch, and I really appreciate that. And it's always nice to have a candle to blow out on one's birthday, because I wouldn't have gotten that anywhere else. Once again, this is a solo birthday for me. And on a side note, the couple seated next to me, they were celebrating their anniversary, and they got that bonus dessert as well. So it makes sense to go to Kochi if you're celebrating something, because that really was a delightful dessert. Overall, I think Kochi is a really solid restaurant, and I love that concept of the skewered food. It really gives the establishment a sense of uniqueness. Now, there's no question about it, Kochi is an expensive restaurant. It's a special occasion type of place, but in comparison to other Michelin-starred tasting menu establishments, it's not a bad price. Now, there are some more affordable Michelin-starred tasting menu restaurants in the city, like 63 Clinton, which I had for my birthday meal last year and I absolutely loved. But there are a lot more expensive, more costly restaurants that have tasting menus in this city than Kochi. In summation, I thought Kochi was definitely worth the price tag. Overall, this has been a great birthday so far. I'm really excited for what this new chapter in my life holds for me, and my dinner tonight at Kochi was fantastic, and I will certainly be back.